Joining me today on Premier Gospel is the Social Club Misfits, Marty and Fern. Welcome to Premier Gospel. How are you both?
Yeah, yeah. Woo. We need a crowd
Thank you so
effect.
We do. I feel like maybe we can ask someone in editing to do that. I feel like this has been such a long time coming, maybe even like maybe a year, maybe more. Um,
sure.
yeah, so I'm excited for this conversation. So the first thing I wanted to talk to you about was the origin story, the genesis of the Social Club Misfits. So could you just tell our listeners about how you both met and then how you decided to kind of form this partnership and duo?
Yeah. Well, thank you for me and friend. Thank you also for making this interview happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So me and Fern were coming out of two different life situations. Um, I was coming out of. I was a part of a uh, very sick church. A church that was very sick. And I was leaving that, and I had just left. I probably was 2 years out by then, and I just didn't, I was just trying to figure out where I wanted to be, because I had been through so much, like spiritual hurt and pain that I was like, I don't think I'll ever go back to church. So during this season of my life, I started writing a couple of songs, and I went to a radio. I made friends with this radio host. This is my perspective of the story. I met a radio host named Jay Blaze in in Miami, and he had a really cool radio station. And Fern was coming out of, he had just gotten out of prison, and he was turning his life around, and everything was going up for both of us. We were in a really good spot, and I remember him being in the radio station, like, "Yo, what's up, Marty?" And like Fern had literally come home and gone on like God mode, like video games, and they have like that God mode where he just was releasing songs every single week, remixes, this and the other. And Jay Blaze would have like a top 10, it'd be like Lecrae's in the top 10, this guy's, and Fern would always be like four songs in the top 10 because he would just be killing it. So I loved Fern's work ethic, and we started talking, we became friends, and we released music really early. And then it just kind of worked out, and we were like, what do we call ourselves? Like, what do we do? And so it was that's kind of how we met. We met via radio station, out of two interesting parts of our lives where we were definitely at some crossroads. So yeah, it's pretty much how we met.
And then I'll throw this question to Fern. How did you come up with the name Social Club Misfits?
Well, ironically enough, we could have swapped questions because he tells that as well. He tells that story real well too. But loosely, real quick, Social Club is based off of an actual thing that's in a movie. It's a movie called The Bronx Tale, and the Social Club was just a place where they would all meet up. The mobsters and the fellas, they would just all meet up, and they'd have a place where they could tell tales and they could tell the stories of the day and kind of just share each other's hearts throughout the day, the good, the bad, the ugly, and just leave
Yeah.
it all there. And the doors were closed and nobody could come in, and it was just the boys. You know what I mean? So it was just actually a place of safety. Felt like, ironically enough, in the movie, it probably wouldn't look like that. But it's like a safe space for us where we could just discuss whatever we want to do, anything that we're going through in life. We could just leave it right there on the table. And a lot of times those things just started turning into songs. But Social Club itself was based off of a place inside of a movie called Bronx Tale, and then we just spun it to our narrative because it made sense to our lives and to the group.
Yeah.
Awesome. So when I think about the Social Club Misfits, I do think about your individuality. I think I maybe this is a bold statement, but I see like redefining Christianity because you're just two very normal people. Like what you see is what you get. You see Fern, you
Yeah.
get Fern. You see Marty, you get Marty. So I just want to ask you about redefining Christianity as like a concept.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you individually?
Yeah. I think for me, um, like a big piece of my story, unfortunately, is going through all like the trauma and crap that I went through with my old church, and I feel like I'm not alone in that. A lot of people understand what it feels like to be hurt by the church and be in a position where you're manipulated and they lie about you and they discard you very quickly after years of giving your life and time and service. And so being a part of leaving the church early on in my career, like I had gotten saved when I was like 18. And then I started work instantly just thrown into this church world. And then about 4 years into it, my pastor, he had an affair, just a bunch of things. There's a lot of terrible things happen. And so it really made me have a distrust for leaders, and maybe it definitely gave me a distrust for just. I feel like even now, I still serve in my church right now. Even serving in church, I see pieces of me that are like unable to just follow the norm because I'm like, if I follow the norm or do what they want me to do in this process, like I'll give you an example, right? So like I'm serving in my church in like the coffee bar, right? I make everyone's coffee, everyone comes in. It's a whole thing. They say, "What's up to Marty?" I'm the coffee guy. I didn't want like I put my name to serve, but once they started reaching out, I was like, nah, I'm good. I'm good. Because immediately I almost had like this reaction where it was like, I have been served. I was a youth pastor years ago. I was heavily involved in like heavily. I was in every meeting. I was top of the, I was at one of those TBN churches, and this is when all that happened. I say that to say this. My view of the church is a little bit different, probably than somebody who was either raised in church or is experiencing church now. I know what it feels like to be hurt and all these different things, and I know what it feels like to come back. I know what it feels like to deconstruct your faith. I know what it feels like to think that the pastor has it all together and then really see behind the scenes that he's struggling. He doesn't. Think that with our music is that I always wanted our music to be wrapped in grace, right? So grace for the pastor, grace for the member of the church, grace for everyone in the church, because we're all human and we're all really in our own way messed up and deeply, deeply in need of love. We all need care. We all need affirmation. We all need kindness. And we become on survival mode, I feel like, in the church world. And so I've seen, unfortunately, in this season, a lot of Christians who are hurt by the church. And so one of the missions, I think, for me and Fern is to always inject humanity into the gospel that we preach, right? It's really easy to talk about a God and not make it personal, right? We talk about, especially now in politics and everything in America, they talk about abortions, this and the other. And I feel like we're really quick at not humanizing and personalizing a lot of the things that we see and do and feel like, we had a shooting a couple of years ago and it was literally my old high school. And people were talking about the high school. Like, I'm like, it's almost like talking about that family member that it's like grandma's in the room and we're talking for her and she's like not responding. We're like, well, grandma did this. And like, we're not making things personal and not humanizing, I believe, the way we speak about God, the way we speak about our faith, and the fact that faith is a long process. Like sanctification takes your whole life. Like this idea that you need to get it together right now, and there's a working process. And so I feel like with the grace and mercy that God has shown us, we showed people in our music. And so we try to joke around and have fun and at the same time humanize the Christian experience, because it's not easy. It's not easy to be a believer, and it's not easy to navigate in this landscape that we call culture. And so it's a lot easier though to take it step by step and humanize the process. So with Social Club, we started out, even the idea of like pizza party, like we always wanted to be connected to local church because we felt as if we leave, and all these kids went to this concert and they're not connected to where we are or connected to some type of community, they're gonna fall. They're not gonna thrive as believers. And so I think our goal has always been to like not only do we love Jesus, but we're not really preach. I don't feel like we're preachers. We're men who make great music, talk about Jesus, and talk about the lifestyle, about what it looks like on a day-to-day basis, living out your faith, and how you're gonna mess up and you're gonna thrive, and then some. It's just this hills and valleys experience, but like in every relationship, that's just the reality. So we try to humanize the Christian experience.
That's
Well
awesome.
said. I like that.
Is there anything you want to add, Fern?
I mean, I would just add that, like, now there's just so many different avenues to like look at faith, and whether it's the internet for the last 25, 30 years, where as before our parents just had the one preacher who just said the word and they just had to go with that. And then so I just feel like with so many different ways to hear the gospel, I feel blessed that God chose us through the art of music to consider us to share that. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, I feel super blessed to be able to write songs that I feel and I know, because those songs have imparted, blessings on me. Actual gospel. Sometimes hearing the songs back, I'm like, man, you said that. I hope they hear that, because wow, like sometimes like I look up in the sky. I told Marty about this. I had a little writer's block a little while back, and I just always look at God and say, God, what we writing today? What we writing today? And so that's my main thing now. I can't even start writing without asking, hey, what are we writing today? And so that's basically in a nutshell, to piggyback off of what he said, but just the blessing to be able to impart gospel in a human way where the youth can understand it, or not only youth, just anybody. When you hear it, it's just like right there, it's right with you. You know what I'm saying? We're in the room, just like Jesus is in the room with us right now. That's how we like to do our music. Like we're in the room with you. You know what I mean? Walking with you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I just feel like you guys are very fun. You're not too like serious, and I really like that because I feel like there's so much Christianese around, and I'm just like, let's just be normal. Christians are not always weird. Some are, but not all of us.
Yeah. Well, I think that to me, I feel like Christians are weird, and that's the best part because, like,
True.
I think, I think about I think it's the best part for like us three, right? Because we can make fun of like Christians in a way that it's not gonna. We're not hurting people's feelings or like doing it to make. It's almost like just the culture is funny. It's like our culture is funny in general. Like humanity culture is just funny. But I feel like when it comes to the Christian experience, if you're unable to like laugh or poke fun at something, like there's a problem with it. We should be
Mm.
all able to question and ask, what's the heart behind this and stuff. But also it's good to have fun. Like I have a lot of friends of mine who, like friends of PK, pastor's kid, a lot of friends of mine who are like pastor's kids, and they're the best people in the world because they've experienced church, but at the same time, they can make fun of the silly things that happen. Like, I'll give you an example, right? I went to a service last 2 weeks ago, and the pastor is like a big white guy, big dude, big white guy, and he's preaching, and he gave me classic. He was wearing a suit on stage, which I haven't seen in years, but he's old school. So he gave me I was in the front row with my dad and my mom and a couple like well-known pastors, and I grabbed his jacket. And I'm like, he just handed me his jacket. I was like, all right, I'll grab it. But I looked at it, and it was FUBU. The jacket was FUBU, and I couldn't help it. I was like, everyone in the aisle was like, he's wearing FUBU. He's wearing FUBU. And so, Hannah, I don't know if do you know what FUBU is, because that's a very American culture.
Is it like a
The
It means
90s hip hop, like
yeah, it's 90s black hip hop clothing.
okay,
So
okay.
it's for us by us. It's made by um, a black designer for African American. It's hip hop culture. The fact that he was wearing it, this like white guy from the South, is just the ironic. It was just so ironic, and we just all started laughing in the front row. And he thought we were making fun of him, and I was like, I'm not. You're wearing FUBU, like you're wearing. It's like someone handing you something, and he's wearing like, I don't know, something like we have Steve Harvey suits in America. It's unbelievable the stuff that we have. Anyway, but we joke about it. Like you should
America's
be
a
able
very
to laugh
special
at church.
place.
Yeah, you should be able to laugh at church. I don't know. I just feel like it just can't be that serious. Like God laughed with children. Jesus laughed with children. Jesus cried. Jesus had emotion. So if we remove emotion from what we do, it kind of makes life a little bit boring.
Something else that I want to talk about is just you guys working in partnership. I think there's a reason why this works. I think you guys have said it many times that like it's not normal that something like this would last as long as it has and also have continuous success. So what's it like working in partnership together? What have you learned through that experience? How do you split responsibility? You also have a slight age gap, so how does that also play into like your relationship and different perspectives? Yeah, can you just talk about how you?
And questions are incredible, by the way.
Oh,
But there's
thank
I was thinking before I got on this interview, I'm like, what are the questions gonna be like? But these are insane. But one thing I want to say, like as far as the age gap, like when I came into the game and me and Marty started Social Club, I witnessed him being in his 20s. I was already in my 30s.
yeah,
So now I witnessed him being in his 20s. Now I'm witnessing him doing his 30s. He saw me do my 30s, but now I'm in my 40s. Not many people know that. So I feel like it's been like a beautiful thing for us to see each other grow. But like I feel like he's like not my cousin, he's my brother, but like my little brother that I've seen grow and grow into a young man, into a bigger king. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I seen him when he first started out. He wasn't really, he always says this himself. He wasn't really rapping like that. He was doing whatever he was doing, but he was making dope songs. It was working out for him. And then he put his foot into it, and then we started doing it and started really going hard. But it's just been a beautiful thing. One thing that I say, Marty, we always say this, we agree on this. Romans 8:28 has been the staple scripture to our band, and God in the center of it. Like we know that, yeah, we could rap and it's all that and it's all good, but without God or without any of the Social Club songs ever having a meaning or a relationship to God or pointing somebody to God, it would have never really did anything. The reason that the songs did anything or took it to wherever they took it is because God took his hand on the CD and went like this, and he placed it wherever he wanted and whosever heart he wanted to place it in. What Social Club is a how do I say, is a miracle. I always say it's a miracle. It's two different guys of life who came into a path. We found each other on the same path, but walking from different paths. We're walking different paths and stumbled upon the same path together. So now we walk the same path with different stories, but we have the same, how do you want to say, we have the same end in mind. We have the same goal in mind, to make it and to take our friends with us and our family members to heaven. So when we make this music, that's really what the underlying treatment is under there. You know, we're having fun, we're showing our love, but at the end we have our love for family and friends, and that's what this is all about. At the end, it's just letting them know that the joy of Christ that's in our heart is something that they could have too, and to the fans and to everybody who listens to our music. But that's just something about the age gap and stuff like that.
I think it's funny because like when I think about some of the first songs I ever wrote were in Social Club. Like I didn't make music before Social Club, right? Like I had like little dabbles here and there, but when we first started, like I remember like putting out some of the songs and be like, wow, like this is like my third song I've ever released ever. So people literally saw me and Fern grow for the last 10 years as artists. You know, before when we first started, I didn't produce. Before then, I felt like different parts of like the way I wrote songs were just a lot different. And now I'm in a different position where I'm like, you know, like this whole week I've been writing for other artists because, you know, I've strengthened that gift. And so it's funny, like the evolution of Social Club, because when we first started, we really, Hannah, we didn't know really what we were doing, to be honest with you. We just knew that that if we released music consistently, that eventually the right ears would hear it. And so we worked really hard on delivering just fast-paced, good music. And it literally just kind of, the momentum built itself up and it just went. And there's no, like Fern said, it's a God thing because we didn't, I mean, for us, we were just having fun. And I think to this day, we're still having fun. And we're blessed, you know. When things get a little serious is when I feel like we both tap out mentally. We're like, all right, like I don't want to do this. But when things are fun and energetic and there's momentum, you just want to jump on board. So that's kind of how it started. And then me and Fern, we just kind of just did everything. You know, like Fern would handle merch and I would handle, you know, marketing and social media. And then like,
Your social is really funny, by the way. Your social.
Good. I try. I really do try. It's hard.
Like,
It's hard.
I think there was one video where I was just sold. I was like, these guys are hilarious. Like, I think one of you was tripping up on the stage somewhere. It was like
it was probably
10 into
Fern's too cool to do that. He doesn't. Like Fern looks before he takes a step.
Yeah,
me, I'm like, just head first.
Yo, one thing I want to say about social media, how it's grown so fast. When Marty first got us on Instagram, I remember it was like 2011 or 2012. And before it got all intricate with videos and having to have 4K and doing all this, I gotta say this, we were the best at social media. We were the best that ever did it. Like it was so good, but all you had to do was literally post a picture or, you know, type something clever. So he was killing it with that. And but now, I mean, obviously, God, we're still blessed to be in there like that. But I just know that social media has become such a different animal as far as bands and staying consistent. So it's just good to, still have the algorithm reaching you, you know?
Social media is interesting too. Also, right now, is because it's different than it was before. Back in the day,
Yeah.
all of your first post that you would post, right? You post something new, that would get all your attention, and then you never hear about it again, right?
Yeah.
In the new age of social media, there's stuff that we have that's constantly gaining views, and it's like stuff I posted last year. It's like stuff that you never know. It's like a landmine. Some things are just hit up randomly, and so
Yeah.
that's what I do feel like is kind of good with social media right now. Is like you're able to, some of your posts will live longer on like reels, but it's a lot more competition. Like Fern said, it's a lot more competition. So it's like, how do you deliver your brand in a way that's smart, funny, and cool? And we're always constantly trying to improve on that. I'm always trying to improve on that too. Like yesterday I made a joke to one of my friends, and he sent me a video of me sitting on top of an eagle flying. Like sometimes it's your friends, like just the funny things that you make fun of with your friends, and that's what you want to post.
Yeah.
So it's hard to be an artist because you have to go through a process of constantly reinventing yourself. That's very difficult. And so I feel like over the last 10 years, if you were to say, hey, here's Marty and Fern 2012, here's Marty and Fern 2022, we're completely different people than who we were before. And I think God has a lot to play in that. Even I think about like when I first started making music, I was a very bitter, hurt person. I was a very, I didn't work out a lot of my issues. I just didn't know how to, and I was still hurt from church, and so now years later, going through therapy and handling stuff, and you know, I mean, just a different. Where me and Fern are just totally different people, and so I hope that fans have seen that there's an evolution in who we are, and so that the music has gotten better. I feel like our stories have gotten better, and I feel like fans trust us, and we're very lucky and fortunate and blessed to have fans that have followed us. Some of the fans have followed us for 10 years. It's crazy,
Yeah.
and I think that there's no. If I was to be like, hey, what's the success formula? I don't think we have one. I just think that we're literally under grace, the grace period of God. And so I
That's right.
just, all we can do is just kind of continually flow in that and embrace that and know that God is literally in control of our careers. This year was the toughest year of our life. We lost two huge tours because of, and because we were traveling with CCM artists that had things happen behind the scenes and it kind of hurt them. One was with Hillsong, one was with another artist. And so it's been a tough year for all of Christian music. And I think right now more than ever, people want authentic music. They want an authentic vessel, an authentic artist. And so it's been important for us to keep pulling in and tapping into that authenticity of who we are and what we believe. And that's how the humor comes out. That's how we're able to make fun of stuff. Like I just did a song for Tadashi for his new album. And I said this line that I've heard someone say, and I was like, if God does any more character building, I'm going to become a villain. Like that's the joke about it. Like we're able to joke and have fun and have a good time with our music, but at the same time, still share this message of Jesus, and that there's a hope there for everyone's life.
Now I want to kind of go into your individual stories. So I'll start with you, Fern. Can you kind of tell our audience a little bit about maybe just like your time in prison and just the backstory of the things that led to that and just what that time of life was like for you?
I always started like this. I should have known better. I was a pastor's son, and I always felt like I was just being over sheltered, you know what I mean? Like couldn't watch certain television shows. No, you can't watch that, you know what I mean? And then I remember being at my aunt's house one time. I'm watching The Simpsons, and I call my mom. I'm like, I'm watching The Simpsons, and you can't do anything because you're not here. You know what I'm saying? I went real hard. But just stuff like that. Little stuff like that. I started to think, like, what's going on? Why can't I see that stuff? Why can't I do that stuff? And it just reminded me of the prodigal son, like when he wanted his inheritance and he wanted to get everything and have everything now, and just left. And so that's basically literally the prodigal son story is my life. So I basically just on my 18th birthday, I decided not to go to church anymore. And I remember my dad's a pastor. I'm in the house right now. Like I have the house that my dad raised me in. They moved and he gave me this house, and I'm blessed. And I remember that I heard his shoes walking. I already know he's got his briefcase in his hands, getting ready to go to church. He used to drive the church bus, pick people up too. And he's like, "You ready?" And I'm like, it's even weird even saying it because I'm like, wow, what was I thinking? But like I said, I'm not going today. I'm not. It was my birthday too. He could have been like, dude, it's your birthday. What are you talking about? Nah, and he just cut. All right, and he just, like God. It was a plan. It was an eventual plan that took a long time that I call the lost decade. For 10 years of my life, I just went out on the land. I just went out there and I did whatever I wanted. I was literally living in friends' houses. My dad would let me stay here and stuff like that. But most of the time, I'd be like, no, you got to go, man. You got to get a job. And I'd be in the streets just hustling and just doing whatever I want. And I just remember that, all that stuff just caught up to me one day, just messing around, hustling, just getting in there. Even though I was already having my feet, in the music and I was starting to get a little notoriety in the radio stations, I was messing up on the other side of the spectrum. And I got caught. I got caught one day and I had to go to prison and do 3 years. So basically, hold on one second. So basically, I was going through all that, and at the end, the culmination of all that, I wound up getting 3 years in prison. I go to prison, and you know what? I say it to this day. I'll say it again. It was the best thing that happened to me because literally, I remember other situations I was in before prison or besides prison that I should have died. That I already know I could have died 4 times in my life. I already know those 4 times I could have died. 2 of those times I almost died. I was probably dead and I came back. I don't know how I came back, but it was just stuff like that and stories like that. And I remember just like, sometimes I'd be in the middle of the night, I'm in some friend's house and I'm like, what is life? What am I doing? You know what I'm saying? I'll keep it 100 with you. I'd be in the bathroom, getting lit, you know what I mean? And looking at the mirror and the Holy Spirit, never let me go. Holy Spirit, what are you doing, boy? What are you doing? When are you coming back? I'm like, honestly, don't be talking to me right now. Don't be talking to me right now. I'm lit. Don't be talking to me right now. It's the wrong time. And I just remember that. I just always remember that he never let me go. He'd even pull up on me when I was at my worst. Never left me at all. And I always had, I know this sounds crazy, but I always had like this little guilt to me. I always knew I was wrong. I never thought ever that, oh, I'm right. I'm doing good. Sorry, Mom, but I'm doing good. I always knew I was wrong. And I just kept going because I had to keep checking what's going on in here. What's going on? Why I can't be in here? You know what I mean? And it was just like this thing, which got me into a whole lot of trouble. So I did 3 years in prison. The whole time I'm in there, I remember probably 3 weeks into prison, one of the homies in the yard was like, yo, they do church in here. You know, if you want to ever go to church and just chill out, you know what I mean? And so it was like, yeah, all right, cool. And then so on that Wednesday, I just felt convicted to just go check it out. It was nothing going on. We're not doing anything. We're locked up. So I go to the prison. They got the little keyboard. They got a little tape player with you know what I mean? And all of a sudden, when we used to be in the free world and you had all this equipment and you weren't doing anything to get yourself better in life, now you go to prison, you got a stupid little microphone with a thing and you're like, yo, can we use this? I'm like, what? Like these feelings are coming over me like, yo, man, you lost everything. You need to really figure out when you get back what it is you need to be doing. I remember that Wednesday, it was a small little pulpit / little stage, you know, probably like a 30-person room, but they had it built like a small church, you know. So they had the pulpit and the small little stage. And I remember just walking in, not saying anything to anyone, just walking in because I knew the protocol, you know. I walked in, I'm like, man, I need to get to the front. I need to pray right now. So I basically walked myself. They're already like setting up. It didn't start yet. They're setting up. People are sitting down. I go to the little stage and I just remember throwing myself on the altar. Like if you're like frontwards with my hands out and like if I'm praising, I threw myself on the altar. I had my face on the floor. I don't even know if it was vacuum or nothing. I started weeping. I just started weeping. And it was like my 3rd week in prison. I had lost a lot of weight when I got there because I'm like depressed. I don't want to eat anything. I'm like, damn, what's going on? You know what I'm saying? It was my first time. I wasn't like no jail baby or nothing like that. You know what I mean? So I just remember weeping in 35 minutes. I hear some of the guys saying, yo, he's all right. no, let him stay there, man. He's going through it. Let him stay there. And I just remember I couldn't move until I was done. And when I was done, I slowly got up, got myself in the mix, sang a couple praise and worship songs. And then I just knew I locked in right there. I'm like, man, I'm going to do this time. And when I get out, I know what I'm going to do. But that Wednesday changed my life, because it's funny, because on my 18th birthday was a Wednesday, and I decided not to go to church on a Wednesday. Then I get locked up in prison. I get invited to church on a Wednesday. I run and throw myself on an altar when I'm in prison. When I'm in the free world, I'm trying to not even be over there. But you learn real quick, and you tighten up real quick when they take away the things that really matter to you, even if you don't know they matter to you yet. You know, and I always remember saying this all the time, that all the times my mother cried for me, prayed for me, all the times that anybody prayed, you know, or going to church, the early stages of my life, even though I left at 18, that was a GPS system. It was a GPS system installed into my heart. So when I got lost and I was in the 10 years out there in the forbidden lands, whatever I was doing, when I was 3 years in prison, not knowing if I was going to get shanked or if I was going to get a blade, not knowing nothing, you know what I'm saying? All I knew is that God had me. He had me because that GPS turned on and it started going beep, beep. And I knew in 1,000 days I was going home, but the GPS was already navigating me. So the Lord, the Holy Spirit's already working me in prison. He's like, you ain't going to that trash no more, my brother. So you better tighten up, and I'm gonna show you how to tighten up, and I'm gonna walk with you as you tighten up. So I'm gonna be with you. So that really helped me, knowing that, I was watching the story how the guy was, I forgot his name. I don't know if it was, I don't think it was Zacchaeus, but he was speaking to somebody under the fig tree. Who was under the fig tree, Marty?
What's his face? Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so he was under the fig tree. No, it's a great story. He was under the fig tree, and like he remembers asking God, God, where are you? He's under the fig tree, feeling all forsaken. Where are you? Why did you leave me? And then one time he winds up meeting Jesus face to face, and they're not even talking about that. But before he leaves, he just pulls him over and he goes, I saw you under the fig tree. I heard you. I saw you. You know what I mean? And he looked at him all freaked out. He's like, what? And that's basically what happened, man. I just remember that the Lord, he told me, man, all those times you didn't even understand how you woke up after being on a coke binge for 3 days, all those times you did ecstasy for 5 days in a row and you woke up and you had more strength than people who never did it, that was me. Mm-hmm. That was me. When you thought your heart was going to explode and your boy Ray's holding you in his hands talking about stay alive, that was me. You know what I'm saying? So it gets really crazy. It gets really deep in those 10 years. That was a crazy memory.
I think it was Nathaniel. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, and so basically that's what it was. Like, I thought I was lost, even though I always felt guilty and knew something was going on, and Jesus was a part of my life somehow. I wasn't versed in it yet. When I went to prison, I started to tighten up and realize that everything I went through, he walked with me the whole time. Even when I was tripping, he just never let me go. And some people might differ on that, but I'm gonna just say that I'm here right now because of the grace of God. He never let me go. And yeah, man, that last one really choked me up a little bit. I've kind of forgot about that for a while. But yeah, man, God is good.
My question for you is, what is the impact and importance of prison ministry? Because I think it's something people don't value enough and overlook. Maybe like, oh, should I invest my time there? Should I invest my time there? That type of thing. But how did prison ministry and people coming into prisons and, creating that space for you in that environment, how did that help you walk and mature and get close to God in your faith in those 3 years?
I remember, what a sweet question, because I got in around September, I started visiting the church, but in December, they had a little Christmas special where church was coming in with some guitar players and some singers to come do some Christmas songs for us. And I remember, it's an all males prison, but I remember they brought a female lady with them that she was singing too, so, she's the only girl in the whole prison besides the guards. And I just remember seeing that, and for them coming in, and everybody by the end of this church service was weeping and crying, and just, I remember the lady speaking to us. Out of everybody who spoke to us, she said, your life's not over, it's only beginning. And it's ironic enough, I haven't been involved in any prison ministry as of yet, and I need to be involved in some prison ministry. It is true. And I'll keep it 100. you could publish this or whatever. If you cut it, it's not a big deal. But like I've been blessed to deal with a lot of issues on my own. Like the Lord helped me settle them. But there's a certain issue, which is my prison issue. I never really spoke to anybody about it. You know what I'm saying? Like I tell my stories through my rap songs. I've spoken to Marty some stories. I always hit him up with some stories. But as far as like deconstructing it and kind of just like, yo, let's talk about these 3 years and what they mean to your life. Like, yeah. I've never done that. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So that's why that question, I was like, man, that's a sweet question. Because very important. Nobody really asks those type of questions. We're always so used to saying like, oh, so like when you wrote the song, did you like the beat? Or like, so, you know what I mean? It's just like,
but so much of your experience is in your music. So it's like, to me, it's a given. Man, like, you know?
Big question, man. Thank you so much. It's just, it's incredible to like really dig into that stuff. Yeah. Like I started really thinking, I'm like, man, I gotta write that book because
people need your story. Your testimony.
Man, they're the best. Somebody tell whoever needs to know, this is the best interview we had with the most impact in my life right now.
As we're talking with Hannah, I'm like, man, I'm
discovering myself right now.
This is a side note. I know we're doing something, but I was like, how do I convince Hannah she should do a podcast with all three of us? And that is the format. Because she's so eloquent with her questions and thought. Like, I feel like there's God's always in the details. I think that's what I'm trying to get at. Some of these questions, they're giving us answers that we've never said before. Because, it's really easy also to understand, like, yeah, okay, it's a part of a testimony, but it was a big part of our lives, Fern going through prison and sharing the details, like, no one really asks about that. They just want to hear what's going on now and get through it. And I even think about, like, even my church situation, like, there are a lot of people, especially in our world and in our culture right now in America, where there's such a big deconstruction movement.
Yeah.
And it's good and it's bad. It's good because it's healthy to do that. If you really want an authentic response and if you want authentic questions, it's not good when you become a cynic and it's like the deconstruction process of, why did I do that? Why did that? There's like no answer that needs to be found in that version. There's just pointing the finger. And so it just feels like, you could hear, I've been hurt by church, but like how? You can hear Fern went through prison and had this revolutionary experience that changed his life, but how? Him throwing himself on the altar says a lot about a man, especially where you're worried about everyone looking at you and just saying, I do not give, I don't care. I'm throwing myself because right now the most important relationship is getting right with God. And so I think that that's a big part of Social Club's story. Like one thing I've realized too in the Christian world, I feel like I don't know anyone's story. But for us, our story has always been, I think, the pillar of what holds us together as Social Club. That's why I want Fern to write the book. That's why I want these things, is because it's going to help people, especially in prison ministry. And my wife, she does prison ministry. She goes every Monday, and she goes with the juvenile kids, and she talks to them. And yesterday we were talking because she just came back, and she was like, they're really so hard to like break through. It's funny because she, it's a lot of these kids, it's not even that they're troubled, they're just mentally hurt or mentally there's a mental health thing, and that's why they act the way that they do. It's like, I don't have a mom, I don't have a dad, and the guy's uncle who was raising him just murdered someone. So now the kids, it's just like these intricate, complex stories. And I think that is the human experience. And as believers, if we don't give room to people to, like, if we force people to live in a model of the Christian life that's like, all right, now you gotta do it like this, like that doesn't work. But everyone's story is very deeply intricate and complicated, and they gotta understand that we also serve a very intricate and complicated God. He's not a one-dimensional God. He's not, back in the day, the greatest thing you could do when I was working in a church was to be a pastor. That's not the best thing you could do. That is a labor of love. We are, as believers, we carry the light whether we're going, like, immediately after this, I'm going to get coffee. Like, I'm a light there. I'm a light everywhere. There's been many times where me and Fern have been on the road and we have just been joking around, and you get two types of people. One person saying, I don't know what you guys do, but I love you guys. Like in the airports, and it's always like sketchy because they're staring at us and we're like, okay. Either they don't like the way we look because we look like a 5-man boy band that just looks very like, what do you guys do? You know, like our team when we're all together. So we have people staring at us, and I'm like, all right, here he comes. He's gonna say something, and the guy's like, I don't know, I'm overhearing, and I love you guys. Or you have people that are like staring at us, and then will walk up to us. Like we were at a pizza shop one day, and this guy was staring at us. And in America, if you stare at us, we got beef.
Same in
what's
the
up?
UK.
Yeah,
Same in the
yeah.
UK.
In some countries, if you stare, it's like normal. Like if you go to
Mhm.
Japan, they just stare. It's just weird. But in UK, you stare at someone, you're like, all right, they're gonna rob us, or we're gonna have to fight.
Absolutely. Like,
And so one day we were at this coffee shop, this old white guy is just staring at us, and friends like, I don't know why. This guy, and he just, we're very like East Coast guys, where we're very like open. We're like, this guy's staring at us. We just say that
Yeah,
loud. And
best way to
so
do
the guy walks up to us and goes, um, I'm like 70 and I'm a huge fan of your music, and I just wanted to make sure it was you guys.
it. Yeah, I
You run into a
remember
lot of
that.
people like that where
I
we're
love
like, oh, I didn't expect a 65-year-old man who's wearing overalls, who works on a farm, to enjoy the song enough, or War Cry. And so, Christian music has allowed us to have a platform and a place where we could speak. And it's just interesting, like, we have always people coming up to us. Like, we used to travel so much more in the last couple of years. This year has been a little bit low. But we usually get like, when you go to the airport, they have like the skybox where you can go,
Yeah,
especially when you get to wait on your flight. And so a lot of times we'll have people like walk up to us and they're like, I don't know what you guys do. Can you guys tell me? Because you guys are so interesting. It's because of the way we talk. And I think of myself, if we were negative, or maybe threw in like words that were not appropriate for a Christian artist to like throw in, maybe they'd be like, oh, like who are these guys? But the fact that we could share like, hey, we're Christian artists, we're rappers, and then Fern will be like, yo, you can listen to this with your kids. You can listen to this by yourself with your family. It's going to be a safe space. I think that's amazing. I think we're one of the few artists that allow, and we're only one of the few artists that are a group. I feel like there's not a lot of groups in Christian music,
there's
but
not a lot of groups left, are
yeah,
there?
it's not. And so, I mean, I just feel like we're blessed in this opportunity to, wherever we go, we're literally promoting the gospel and promoting Social Club, both of what we do. So we got to be really careful in what we do, because,
Mhm.
wherever we go, people are asking us what we do, or what. So I don't know where I was going with that. So I'm sorry. I didn't know.
but one
No,
thing I
you're,
want to
It
say too.
inspired me really
you're
heavily.
good.
Yo, one time we were eating, and it was me, Marty, and like the team, 3, 4 other gentlemen, and we're all Latin dudes, and we're just sitting down eating. And then we all step up to leave, and as we're walking out, a lady just puts her hand on my shoulder and goes, "Hey, young man, do you believe in Jesus?" I go, "Yes, I love Jesus." She goes, "I got a word for you." She's remember the prophetic word right at the
Yeah,
restaurant?
yeah.
Stuff like that, man. God's always
Happened a lot.
around. God,
Mhm.
that's true, man. Like, and we take that in stride too. Wherever we go, we always make sure that we're being honorable, and we're showing love to exactly what God has allowed us to do. You know what I mean? So, when we go out of town and we do what we do, we know that we're representing God. We know that that's exactly what we're doing, and we want to make sure that He's proud of us. Want
Yeah.
to make sure that we always make Him proud.
The amount of people that try to witness to us based on our look is extraordinarily
This
troubling.
this is what I meant about you guys redefining Christianity, though, because you are just, like I said, what you see is what you get. Like, you're not trying to be anything other than yourselves, but being yourself is literally what God wants us all to, like, being me, you being you is literally what God wants us all to do. And we'll all meet and minister to different people. And I think like there is something to be said about presence. And I think that's kind of like what you guys seem to be saying, is like where you go, your presence is felt and
Yeah.
it shifts atmospheres, it seems. So, I would just lean into it, honestly. Because I think yeah, like I don't know, you guys are just you and it just works,
It
I don't really know
works.
what else to say. You're you and it works.
Yeah. And I pray that inspires others to know that
Oh
like
yeah.
they can be themselves, and it
Mhm.
works. Um, and I was thinking about this the other day. I was working with an artist, and he was like, where are you? He's like, asked me where I'm from. He's like, where are you from? And I'm like, well, I was like, I was not raised in a bad area. My parents, they do well. Like, I was not raised in like, I guess like the hip hop. environment that I guess people are used to, where it's like, yo, I came from the struggle. Like, I feel like we came from this. I mean, I came from the suburbs. You know, I came from somebody. I love hip hop culture. You know, I'm Latin. I'm half Sicilian. I'm half Puerto Rican. I come from a very you know, I come from New York. We live here in Florida. It's just who we are, and it's like I've never been ashamed of that. I've never been ashamed of like that's who I am. I never had to like make myself feel like I had to be hood or like hood enough or whatever. But I feel like that's important. Like, why do I have to make myself become who you want me to be? Why can't you just accept me for who I am and who God's called me to be? And you know, we say this at shows a lot. God's a designer, right? We serve God, and we have to start thinking of God in a complex way, right? God's a designer. Designers, they create with the end in mind, right? So it's like, I want to create this because it serves this purpose. I don't waste. Creators try not to waste, you know? I think to myself, when God's created us, he created us with purpose, and he created us with intention. And so if you understand that you were created with purpose and intention, you'll understand that, you know, you're not an accident. And the way you are is important. It's important for you to also protect that, because how many people have we seen in this industry who become like, the industry really does change them. And we have friends of ours, other artists that we know who do Christian rap and stuff, who when we first met them, they were the man. They were really good. And then as they evolve, they start believing that they are that good, or start believing that they have to be served instead of serving. Like, we are still serving men. We serve God. We serve local church. We go to local church. We treat this really like a ministry, a job, a calling. And you know, the reason why we do what we do is because it is a calling. It's a calling. We feel like we're called to do it. And unless you understand that responsibility, you know, it's hard to be yourself. And so what I would say, I guess, is just be yourself. Any of our fans, like, be ourselves and be thoroughly yourself, like fully own it, you know, like, and I feel like when you do that, it creates a confidence and people get attracted to that. You know, it's like what you see is what you get. I don't have to guess, you know, it's like, I always love the show Friends, and like the show Friends, you have so many different personality types there. And like, you need the Phoebe, you need the Joey, you need the weird, fun people. It makes life interesting. Imagine if we were all one dimensional characters. It just wouldn't make sense. So be who you are, be who God's called you to be, and not who everybody wants you to be. I think that's the message on music.
Love that. So I had one more question for Fern. My question was just going to be, do you have like a word of encouragement or advice for someone who has got a record or is in prison or is struggling with that, and then also for how people can support that person? So a Christian who is also, you know, got a family member or a friend who is going through that, or how they can help them once they get out.
Yeah. I mean, as far as the family member helping, just patience, you know, patience, you know, the same way he got in trouble by, you know, being up to no good a lot of times. Sometimes, you know, people go to jail for different reasons, but for the most part, for me, someone's knocking on my door. I don't know who it is. So for me, for the most part, I remember what I did, and I remember the change that the Lord put in my heart. If I had a word for the person who has a loved one, it would be patience and perseverance. And if it's somebody, if the word is for the person who's actually coming home, I'm gonna say, I don't even know if this is gonna make sense, but this is what makes sense to me right now. The same intensity that you put into what got you in there, you gotta do a 180, and now you gotta put that same intensity into going to the Lord. You know what I'm saying? Especially if you already come into your mind that, you know, you already know that he's the one that saved you. Once you come into the realization, if you're already there and you're the realization, that's the answer. You have to just go the same intensity you was going the other way. You have to go this way now. Patience and perseverance, if you're showing love to the loved one. But as far as like the person coming home, you got to make a change. You got to make a decision in your life to switch that mindset. It's a mindset. For anything, it's mindset switch. For anything. It could be anything. You want to be a cook, but you're a freaking scuba diver and you don't know. You got a mindset switch. You know what I mean? So that's what I realized when I came home. And even my sister told me that, hey, on the first night I came home, hey, I know you want to do your music. I know you can see all your boys, this and that. Just do me one thing. Go see this person. And this is a little side note you didn't know, but the person that she told me to see when I went to that place was the DJ that he was going to see. And that's why we met in that same building. And another fun fact is I used to listen to that show from that DJ in my prison cell, and I didn't know it was him. I just knew it was the only hip hop station that was coming in. I knew it was Christian. We could hear it. So we cut hair late night and we would just have that station because it was playing. So when I came home and my sister told me, this is how you know it was a miracle, and it all ties in. When my sister told me to go to this station, I wanted to appease her, and I went over there, and come on, he's there. It's the same guy. Man, come on. You can't even, you could write it. It's a movie. You can write it. It's called a movie. But at the end of the day, man, I'm just thankful, man. I'm thankful for the way that it turned out. And I would say also to that man, I know you got to switch your mind, but you got to also switch your heart. You got to switch it. You got to switch. You got to start looking. You got to start hanging out in different places. You got to make sure that you are putting in, you know, what you want to get out. You know what I'm saying? Because you could easily get lost. I could have got lost. I could have got lost again. But you know what? I was already married, and the Lord started putting those things to keep me tied to him. He gave me a beautiful wife. He gave me my daughter. He gave me I was mind switch, heart switch, leg, arm switch, all switch. You know what I mean? I totally switched my life around. But I just feel blessed, man, because I got a cousin doing life in prison, and he's been in there since he was 18. You know what I mean? I've seen people die in prison. I've seen people, you know, die in the street. So I feel blessed to be home. Talking to my sister from the UK, it's just insane to me because I know where I've been at. I remember crying and was happy to see the woman that she was just singing to us, and we just felt happy to see humans. We couldn't, you know what I mean? I remember raising up the flag because I was the warden's orderly. So I would clean his offices, and I could raise the flag and bring it down with my friend John. And we were actually in the free world because we were standing outside of the prison gate. Mm-hmm. And at any given time, you have an M1 or M4 aimed at you from the control tower. But, you know, it was just our little bit of freedom, you know. And I would just say anybody going through that experience, you're getting ready to come home, man. You got some people that love you. Just come home and do the right thing. You know what that is because you know what the wrong thing was. And you know where it got you.
Good.
Yeah. It's just some tough love. I could have broke it down way smoother, but I just wanted to give
no. Be absolutely you. Be real, because that's the thing that's always going to resonate. So you know, you mentioned earlier about the prodigal son as well. I think during my research, I saw that there was a picture of, like, was it the day you were released and you went to church with your family?
Yeah.
Could you talk about that just to maybe give someone hope of, you know, family reconciliation, and just that, you know, you're not defined by what you did, because you know who you are, and the people who love you for who you are.
It's funny you saw that picture because that picture is actually in the back parking lot of my job, my old job. It was called True Value. It was a hardware store. So during my whole work release process, I was able to go to work there. So it was my last day of work under being a prisoner at the same time. So they met me there because they visited me in prison every single weekend, 3 hours the whole time. So that picture is actually them. It's the first Saturday they don't have to visit me in prison. So we all were there spread out, the whole team. We did the time together. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, with a strong team, with strong family, people praying for you and you wanting it as well. It's definitely something that can be done, and I'm living proof of that. You know what I mean? But I know it's hard out there when you don't have family, when you don't have loved ones, but I know that God can still intervene in your life, and if it's just you, or if it's just you and one person, you can still do it. If it's just you and one person, where two or more are gathered, God's there, so He already got you. But yeah, it definitely helped me to have a strong team. I had my wife, who was my fiance at the time, just always visiting me, writing me a letter every single day. I would get 5 letters every day. So just to let you know, like in prison, when they do mail call, they'll be like, mail call. And then all the prisoners come around, and half the prisoners know they ain't even getting no mail, but you coming to see if, wow, somebody wrote. I felt blessed every day. Miranda. One time I pulled up to the little Sarge office because I knew I had some mail. Sarge was getting too heavy. He's going through them. He got to go through them. He's like, man, you got some pretty pictures in there. I'm like, come on, Sarge. Why are you looking at my pictures, man? You know, but it always felt good to have that love and that strong team. So as you're doing your time and it's winding down, and I remember talking to her all the time, babe, I got 1,000 days. Babe, we got 800. babe, we got 600 days. Ooh, we down to 300. Walking it all the way down to I'll see you tomorrow. You know what I mean? So strong team, strong family. And if you wanted to, it's going to be beautiful. And if it's harder for you and you don't have that as well, like I said before, God still could be there for you. God still will be there for you. It will be a little bit tougher, but if you want it, God is the greatest thing that can happen to your life, especially coming out of a prison situation.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
You got
So Marty, I want you to share your story as well, just your experience of I guess getting saved and then working in a church, giving
yeah.
150% to the church, and then just kind of that experience of like just kind of from your perspective, what were the red flags? What were the things that you struggled with? What were the things that you couldn't reconcile and you were like, okay, I have to step away? Um, yeah.
Yeah. So super complex story. When I was around 18, well, first off, we go back. Um, Growing up, my parents were involved in church. I never really forced it on me. Like I wasn't really forced to be a part of church. I'd usually skip church or not be a part of it. I feel like I never really had my connection to God. Like I was like Fern, where it was like when I hit 18, I'm a jet. I just don't. It's just a waste of my Sunday, and a waste of my Wednesday nights. Or my parents would bring that too. And then when I was 18, I went to like my first like real youth group. Someone invited me at my school actually. Invited me to church. Went to church with him, and like I didn't know anything. That I just you take someone who's really been to like traditional church and then you put them in like this church, and it was so contemporary and cool and people look like me, so like felt really good to be a part of a youth group that kind of everyone looked like me. The youth group was in Fort Lauderdale. Now I had to be 18, which is like a little older, but you could stay in there because they had young adults mixed in. And I remember being a part of youth group and having this just crying and not knowing why I was crying. And I was like, why am I crying? Like, what's going on? And so I just kept going, kept pursuing it. And then um, I started working at a church when I was around 21. I started going to church in West Palm just because I felt like in the beginning, first couple months of me being a believer, I was still working out some of the things that I had to so people saw me from like being this wild, crazy kid to being somebody who I wanted to get respect. Like I wanted to start being seen as somebody who could be like trustworthy and respected, but I felt like I burned that bridge. So I was like, let me go to a new church, start fresh, start serving with people who don't know who I am. So that's why I started going to West Palm, and then I started going to a different church in West Palm, and they put me through Bible college as long as I served. And so I worked part time at church, and the other half of my life, the beginning of my life, I worked at a store called Nordstrom, and I was like an HR manager, and I would do both. And I was going through school at the same time, Bible college, doing all these different things. And right around the fourth year, right when I graduated, maybe around teetering on the fifth year, the pastor started acting like really suspect and started, I don't know, just some certain questions started coming, like red flags, right? And I remember my dad would always tell me, my dad was like, listen, like, they're manipulating. He would tell me, like, they're manipulating you. You don't even see it. And they're asking you to do things that are inappropriate. And you need to be really careful about the relationship that you have with your pastors because it's getting weird. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. I never understood. And then I realized that, like, they would dangle my calling over my head all the time. They would say, like, even doing, like, I would be interested in Christian music, and they would be like, if you do that, you're going to forfeit God's calling on your life. So I literally had to stay within the walls of what they wanted me to do at all times. When things went right, they took credit for it. When things went wrong, I was to blame. I was constantly berated, constantly. It was like a very abusive relationship. I just wanted their approval. I felt like if I got my pastor's approval, like that was getting God's approval. And so a lot of things that I did and relationships I had cut off because of them, and they were heavily manipulating me. And like, for instance, even one time I remember wanting just to serve because our church didn't do any outreach at all, like, which is a really big red flag. And there was the church that was doing like a local, fundraiser or something that had to do with just like serving like the homeless. And I was like, I want to help them out. So I left my church on like a day that we didn't have service. We had services on like Thursday. So on a Wednesday night or Tuesday night, I was like helping serve the homeless with the local church. They were so pissed at that they sat me down for like a month. Like, I was constantly just in this place of like, can I do something? Can I not? Like, just heavy manipulation. My pastor ended up having an affair with one of the lawyer that represented the church, divorced his wife, berated his wife. His wife was just as bad, to be honest with you. But they manipulated us. And when I started going to a healthy church, I started realizing that, like, wow, like, this doesn't feel like, it just didn't feel. But even to get to that point. So anyway, on a Sunday morning, while my pastor was supposed to be going through marriage counseling with his wife in a different state, he ended up coming in and kicking me and a couple other people on staff out the church. Said, if you're not with me, you're against me. So something I gave 5 years of my life to. I had to be 23 at the time. I gave my whole life to this church. I was just discarded like it wasn't a big deal. And so that really, really, really burnt me. And then all the people that I had relationships with, friendships with, they all cut me off. Didn't have any connection to anyone. I had family that was a part of the church. They cut me off. So not only did it mess with me as a man in relationships with other people, but then family was involved too. Sucked. It was terrible. So around 25, 24 years old, I kicked out 23 or 24. It was 2 years later where I started going back to church. We're at 25. And that's when we started Social Club. And yeah, because it was 10 years. So like 25 is when I really committed to Social Club. And so I started making music with Fern. And so a lot of the music that we had was very angry, very bitter, very cynical, very poking fun at certain things because I was just going through that emotionally. And so, even got to the point where I remember, I even forgot about this because it feels like it's so far in the rear view, but I remember thinking like, this should just be the end. Let's just end it here. I remember like being in a bathtub and grabbing razors and being like, this should be the end, right? Like this was my parents' house at the time. And I'm like, this should be the end right here. And luckily I had a lot of great people in my life that loved on me and kept challenging me to be like, bro, you're better than this. You're better. So I had a lot of good friends around me that kept holding the standard up. Like, you're called. I know you've been through this, but like, there's still a place for you inside the kingdom. And also like, don't let this define you. So I started working to get out of church and out of this mindset that I was going through, especially going through Latin church. Latin church in America can be very manipulative as well. Like, it's just a weird thing. It's like, imagine meeting somebody so heavily ingrained in Christian culture that they don't read the Bible. It's just who they are. It's like a cultural thing. And so like, it was really, really bad for me. Anyway, long story short, when me and Fern started making music, that was kind of like the chip on my shoulder at the time, and it started growing. Around 25 years old, we performed at a church called VU, and that's when things just picked up from us from there. We met Rich Wilkerson, who was my pastor at the time, our pastor for a while, Chris Durso, a lot of these pastors that kept encouraging us. And then what they would say is, hey, if we're preaching at your church, which they were at the top of the food chain, you got to bring in Social Club. So that's how we got a lot of our start, was because we were connected to a local church and we just kept traveling. But throughout that process, I feel like my testimony never really stopped because I had to go through therapy, which I encourage believers to go through. Having a professional who can help, work through some of the thoughts and mindsets that are toxic in your life and repeating things that you do because you just don't know any better. You're on survival mode. I was on survival mode for so many years of my life. that I just, and even it bled into traveling. Like 2018 was a great year in our life. We went on a world tour type thing. We did so many things, but internally I was still battling a lot of the hurt that I dealt with that inside of the church. And so it took me going to therapy and having tight community where I have people in my life that still to this day, like I have accountability and friends and a tight community. I have friends in my life that are the best thing and best examples that I've ever seen of Jesus in my life. And so they're not perfect, but they love me and they're committed to me and they're friends of mine I can rely on the rest of my life. It took me a while to develop that. And so, throughout the social club process of me being me, I started producing, I started doing all these other things. But now I could possibly say like I'm at my healthiest emotionally, health wise, like started boxing, which is a big piece of my testimony because when I was sad, I would eat. When I was sad, I would buy clothes. When I was sad, I would do things that were out of pocket because I just didn't know how to handle all these triggers in my life. And so I think that going to church is important, but I also think that seeing mental health specialists are very important because you don't know what you're dealing with. And I think the idea around mental health is like, oh, he must be going through it or really down bad. When really it's just that we all need to see somebody who can help us work out our thoughts. And luckily the guy I go to is a believer. It doesn't have to be a believer. If you're out there and you're listening and you're like, do I have to see a therapist? Like, it doesn't have to be a believer. I just say you need a professional to help. I used to go to a church where the pastor was the therapist, the this, the that. I'm like, you're not qualified for any of that. You're giving all this advice out that I don't even know if you're qualified for. And so that was another piece about the church that I was a part of was like, how dare you see a mental health or a therapist, like what's going on with you? It's demonic. It's not like it couldn't be something like we're complex humans that need a savior. We're deeply hurt people. It was demonic, or it had to be like something was on me that I was doing something in my house. I was cursing the house instead of just realizing that I had things that I just really had to work out. So that's kind of like the intro to my testimony. And so I've learned a lot, and it's given me a big grace for others who maybe are discarded by the church or maybe discarded by the culture. Where I always say there's a culture of Christianity and then there's authentic Christianity. The culture of Christianity is you better look good, you better act good, you better do this right and do all these rules and then you'll be accepted. And the actual Christianity is God has accepted us. We are loved. And it's like both of them have contrast thoughts. One is I have to do to be right. And the other one is you are accepted who you are and that we're on a process together. And so I've adapted that form of Christianity and I've rejected the cultural Christianity that says that seeing a mental health expert or doing certain things means that you're demonic or like, I don't know. They didn't make it always a big thing. And my old church was very spiritual. So everything was like, the pastor knew best and no one knew better than him. And it was just a fight of power. And endedly, you realize that my pastor had the deepest issues, but he had no one to turn to. So he was on survival mode. So I have grace for him to know that he didn't know how to handle himself. And then maybe if he had a safe space, he would have not cheated on his wife and had these inappropriate relationships and messed with the money in the church and stuff like that. And so it's given me a grace as a man to realize that he was deeply flawed as well. And we're all deeply flawed humans that need a savior. And so that's kind of like it kind of crosses in within Social Club because a lot of the framework of what we believe has been based on experience. And so as I develop my belief in God and my version of God changes in a more authentic way. Like, for instance, one of the chips on my shoulder right now for the church is like in our Bibles, when you open the Bible, I don't have a Bible here, it's probably another room, but if you open a Bible, you'll see like Matthew, blind Bartimaeus, right? Like when I think about that, I think about how like the Bible company put blind Bartimaeus in the beginning of the chapter so we know where to read. Like we identify people by their flaws. Blind Bartimaeus was not blind after that. He was the man who was healed. And I don't want us, I don't want Fern, I don't want Marty, I don't want any of our fans or any of the people that serve God to be always identified by the things that they did wrong or
Mm-hmm.
the things that held them back. And Christian culture does that. You know, hey, that's the guy who, he was in a gang, and like we always identify him by all the flaws because it's like how wonderful it is. But like, no, I'm a saint now. I'm no longer that person who I used to be. I've evolved, and if you can't see the fact that I've evolved from that place, then I have no place here because God has done a work in my life and I'm no longer that person anymore. And I feel like in the church, we are quick to identify women, men, kids as they used to do this, they used to do that. The woman with the issue of blood, well, you know what? She spent the rest of her life without that. And so I hope that we stop identifying people by their by the complexities of life that we
Mm-hmm.
go through to get to meet God. And we start identifying people as like this is a man of God who's had his life changed. You know, I don't know if you understand. You probably, hopefully, you guys get what I'm saying. But I just have a chip on my shoulder to see a Christianity and to see a generation serve God in authenticity and not be literally give them room to make mistakes. Like we don't give anyone room to make mistakes. We don't give anyone room. So what ends up happening is they make gigantic mistakes. Instead of dealing with the small thing, we deal with the major thing until it becomes a bigger problem. So I think about some of the people like, friends of ours that who are pastors who have had scandals, and I think to myself, like, did they ever have a safe spot,
Mm-hmm.
safe place to tell people, like, I'm mentally exhausted and I'm going to make some bad decisions because no one's caring for me. I'm always giving, I'm not getting. So I hope that Social Club could start to change that narrative inside of the Christian culture that so badly needs to understand that God is bigger than your Sunday morning God. God
Mm-hmm.
is huge and God is working throughout the world and throughout people's lives. And that's why I think it's important for people to travel too. Like when you see God move in other places, it's not just like this self-centered God that's just there to meet
Mm-hmm.
our needs. He's everywhere. He's intricately in everyone's lives, and it just doesn't go the way we want it to go. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. So it kind of leads quite well into the question that I had for you, which was about just like your identity, because from what you said is like so spot on about how like I think in Christianity and in Christian culture, people are defined by their job title or by their gift and their talent, or by like you said, we're like our testimonies can be part of our story, but they don't define who we are.
Right.
So what advice would you give to people about finding identity, I guess, first in Christ
Yeah.
over things and people and experiences?
Yeah. I think that for me, I think one of the biggest game changers for me was I stopped going places where people would identify me by those things, right? So it's like you're way too familiar with me and I can't be there. So I've had to like, even for us as Social Club, we've had to like be aggressively um, intentional about the way that we do music because it's like, yeah, Fern was in prison for 3 years of his life, and yeah, he had 10 years where he wasn't following God, but that's not all he does. Just because I was suicidal and dealing with mental health and had a burden by the church doesn't mean that's all I do. So a piece of me had to um, let people know straight up, like I've had to correct people, and that's okay. I've had to tell family members, like the person, baby Marty, is not. I'm not that person anymore. And so it's hard to do that. And sometimes you just got to go where you're more celebrated and less just tolerated with. I know that's like a popular phrase we use in church, but like, yeah, it's a real thing. You got to go so I think about this, right? Jesus, while he's operating in ministry, right? He's operating, he's healing. They start to say, "Oh, isn't that the guy from?" And he's the kid of. And so as they start to bring this familiarity of like who he used to be, he is unable to operate. He just moves on to the next city because they start to like dehumanize him. They start to say, "Well, isn't that the guy who did this?" And they start to like make him somebody. They start to make him like that's the carpenter. You're gonna listen to the carpenter. You're gonna get like they put him in a position where he's unable to operate
Mhm.
because, and so he has to move to the next city. And I think that sometimes in our lives we are unable to operate when you're subject to the chains of familiarity, when you're subject to the chains of that's the kid who grew up, that's the kid who grew up and that's what he used to do. And so like that's all they see. And so we've had to be aggressively intentional in redefining that, like I'm not subject to my mistakes and I hope that no one else is. Like, imagine if we all were held to the past.
Mhm.
And then I'd say that would be the first thing is go where you're celebrated. Another thing is like you're constantly working to do that, and there are going to be more people you're going to meet in your life. So sometimes we feel like, well, they know my story and they know this, but they're the ones who help feed me and serve me and stuff. Sometimes you need to get out of that, take that leap of faith, and go somewhere different. And so for me, I mean, I went from working as an HR administrator for a big company to being a rapper. So if everyone just was like, "Isn't that the guy from HR like rapping?" Like I probably wouldn't be accepted. So it's important for us to constantly break those stereotypes and those ideas of who we used to be, um, and get people around you who understand that to see your potential. And I always feel like some of the people who see your best potential are people who don't like you. um, I always feel like the people who don't like you, the reason why they don't like you is because they see your potential better than anyone else. Those are the people that are like, oh, that guy's talented. It scares me. So yeah, I would say, it's a process. Even when I first started making music, people would be, or start making beats, people would be like, they'd treat my beats like I was just a new producer. When I was like, I want to be taken seriously. I'm putting thousands of hours into this. And so sometimes it's show and proof, and sometimes it's like I'm just going to discard the people who won't allow me to grow and move on.
I think that's so true. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I think even what you were saying about how Jesus couldn't complete miracles in, was it Nazareth? And it was and
Uh-huh.
like scripture says, because of their lack of belief and their lack of faith. So sometimes your environment actually hinders your ability to grow
Yes.
and move forward. So
Yeah.
I think that advice is just sound on. Um,
You said it way better in the one sentence than my whole dissertation.
it's only because God's made me spend like, that's one of the Bible scriptures God's made me spend like the last year on. So
Yeah.
that's why. But yeah. Um, Now I want to talk about the music. We got through the hard stuff, guys. We on the other side.
Oof. Sweating.
Home stretch. Home stretch. No, I'm joking. So I want to talk about how you define your sound, because you are so this is the Latin Selection Show, so it is Spanish Christian music, but you guys are also CCM, you're also like CHH, like you do the Spanglish thing sometimes. So I want to ask you about doing a little bit of everything and how you kind of manage expectations from maybe from a business perspective, of if there's an expectation that you do certain sounds and you hit certain maybe requirements, just from a music business perspective, but then also how do you balance that with your creativity and wanting to explore new sounds and just your creative process?
You can start, Marty, if you want.
Yeah. Um, so so being from South Florida, we have a lot of so like our radio stations here, they're gonna play hip. It's gonna be like this right now. If I turn it on, it's gonna have Drake off the new album Her Loss. Then it's gonna have the new Selena Gomez song. Then after that, it's gonna have this song, and then it's gonna have a Latin song. It's gonna have Bad Bunny, and then we're gonna have this.
Yep.
And so a lot of that is normal for South Floridians. When you're in Florida, when you're in Miami, when you're in West Palm, Fort Lauderdale, the radio stations are very diverse. I don't know. Maybe it's because like Latinos, we're very diverse. We're very the types of people that we listen to. One second we're listening to Maverick City, and the next second we're listening to Bad Bunny, and then we're listening to Drake, and then we're listening to Social Club. So it's like we're just very diverse in the way we listen and process music, and that's just normal. Like that's just what we. So I always thought that was normal. And then when you go to other places, like you go to Texas, Nashville, California, they have one station that does one thing. And so I think growing up, listening to radio stations where you would have Latin music, then you have like, they'll throw in like on Sundays, Kirk Franklin, hour. And then right after that, it's like something else. So it's like we grew up listening to radio. We grew up in the environment where radio was always on, where it was just a very multi-genre experience. And so for us, that was normal, but for everyone else, that's weird. So when we approach music, a lot of how we approach music is based on how we grew up. So it's like you'll have a Latin song, so we throw Que Lo Que in there. Then you'll have a song like a song where girls want to shake their butts, like a Who That Is, where it's like you know it's a jock jam. And then you have, and out of nowhere you have a big chorus song, and then that's where we have like the war cries and the enoughs or the unstoppables. So for us, it was normal. It was never different. And we never actually thought about that. I feel like until a couple of years ago, I never thought about that until someone was like, you know, your music's very crossing genres. And I was like, yeah, I just thought that was normal. But then you listen to other artists and it's like you have the same song over and over and over. It's just hip hop, hip hop, hip hop. And for me, I think my personality, that's like, it's hard to just listen to hip hop, hip hop, hip hop without something changing, you know? And so I think that that's really a lot of what why we style our music the way we do. It's because that's what's normal. It's natural for us. And so, you know, when we approach music in the beginning, when we approach music, me and Fern would just find a beat and send it to each other and be like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And would work like that. Nowadays, now that I produce more, I'm more hands-on in the experience of like I know what Social Club should make. So this new album, you know, a lot of the I produced 7 songs on this new album, or maybe 8 songs on this new album. At this point, I know what works for us, and I know what I would love to hear us on. So like a Who That Is, I would love to hear that. And then like a song like Rendezvous, where it's like a big, you know, when we perform that song, it hits so hard, it's a mosh pit. We need both of those. You know, I want to bring a diverse experience when we perform. And then I always want us to have some Latino representation. So I want us to have like some Que Lo Que or some Tuyo, or we're fans who are, you know, most of the time when we go to concerts, we would see Latin, white, black. It was everybody, you know, it was every type of race you could have. You know, you'd have Asians, so when we first signed to management looked at the crowd and was like, I've never seen a crowd this diverse. And you guys are not in the CCM market. You guys are not in this market, but the crowd is ridiculously diverse. What do you guys do? And I was like, I think it's just because we make music that's true to us. And so that's one of the things that we would say is like our strength, is that we're able to make music that is across a genre bending experience. And I feel like now it's becoming it's becoming normal. You know, like they asked Tyler the Creator the same question, like, "Hey, you're a hip hop artist, but you do pop, like, you know how?" And he's like, "That's, you know, I like that. That's normal now. It's just becoming normal." But when we first started, it was people were like, "I don't know what I'm gonna get," and I'm like, "That's the good part. You don't know what you're gonna get. You don't know if you're gonna get a banger or you're gonna get a radio song. That's the fun part about making music, is that, you know, if you travel with us as an artist, if you follow us, you know, we're gonna give you a diverse listening experience." So for us, it was just normal, but for the world, it might have been a little bit different. Like there's some songs that I have that are some rock songs that are not hip hop at all, just rock songs that I should have put on this new album, but gladly I didn't, because we could save it for the next album. But I just think about stuff like that. Like we are just diverse humans, and then me and Fern, we come from 2 different spots. And so he has a style of music, I have a style. So it's like, how do we connect all those dots? And so it seems hard and complicated, but for us, it's just kind of normal. So it's like, you know, like Who That Is, I produced that. Originally, I produced that for Andy for his last record. We just didn't get to finish it. And I was like, I'm going to keep it for this record. And Fern was like, wow, this song connects to me because I grew up in this era. So Fern got DJ Laz on the phone, who created that style of music, you know, and put that on the record. So we have some guy who created this style. Like that's our Uncle Luke, but he's in Florida. You know, Uncle Luke's out of Texas. So, you know, or maybe he's out of Miami. But anyway,
Yeah,
he's out of Miami, right?
Yeah.
So we just connect the dots. And I think that when I think of Social Club, that's the last thing I'll say. I think about we're showing people who we are. We're not making music to what the trend is at that time. We're showing you who we are. It's like when we grew up, Fern always tells a story about how, his cousins would come from New York, and then you see your cousins from New York, and you're like, wow, you have a style and a certain vibe that we don't have here because you're from New York. Nowadays, you don't really get that because we all are on the same trends. We're all in the
Yep.
same styles. But back in the day, it was like you had to live in New York to get that style. You had to live in Texas to get that style. And so like that's a part of your culture. Embrace that. Now it's been kind of watered down, but the question for us has always been like, how do we reveal ourselves, reveal who we are, but also our culture as South Floridians who love God, who love Jesus, and want to share the message of hope through different ways. And so that's kind of like the answer to your question is that's how we've tried to do it.
So am I correct in saying that Fern, you do a lot of writing, and then Marty, you have stepped more into producing for this album? But you both write.
We both
No,
do.
he writes as well. Obviously,
Yeah.
he writes as well. He produces, and I write as well. But yeah, he has brought production into our in-house, and he has kept that in-house for us, and it's been a blessing because like we can make sure to have what we need. We don't have to always like. Obviously, we work with other people as well and collab with them, but for the most part, when we take the reins on our own production, it allows us to work faster, more efficient, and it's ours. It's ours. Comes from the house. That's one of the things I always wanted to say too. Like for the most part, when we first started rapping, and it ties into something you said on the last portion, but like Social Club, we came into the game telling everybody to be themselves. That's how we literally came in the game, and it's a beautiful thing to still be seen that way, to still be seen as the guys who, hey, you're just Fern and you're just Marty. What you see is what you get, because that's how we came in. We came in wanting you to see us at face value and know what you were getting, and it was just given. We were just giving ourselves, and I always like to say this: you can't go wrong if you give them your life. You can't go wrong if you give them your life.
I love that. Yeah. So, what is your creative process like? I know you've kind of touched on it a bit, but how long did it take to kind of bring this whole album together? And I guess also it's like your post-COVID album, so even just like going through COVID and then coming out with this sound.
We did have a COVID album, and then we did the post-COVID album.
Yeah.
And this is the post-COVID album, but I actually caught COVID on this album.
Yeah, it's true.
So it's post-COVID, pre-COVID, all COVIDs. Yeah, but as far as the writing process, I get production from Marty, and we're already talking. He's sharing vision, and he's letting me know, how he sees me in there. And then at the end of the day, I start to just get in my zone. I find my pocket in there. And my writing process, I like to be in my patio, and I just pace back and forth with my headphones until I get that opening line. I'm searching for open line. As soon as I get the opening line, because I already know where I want to go, and as a writer, I can get there. So I get that one opening line, and to be honest, if it's that line that I'm looking for, you get excited. To be honest, as a writer, you get excited. You get that line, and you know where you're going. I'm like this. You're just typing away. You're literally freestyle typing is what I like to call it. Because like versus like I freestyle type where a lot of like Marty, he might freestyle right into the mic and keep that. You know what I'm saying? So I'll just start typing real fast. You know what I mean? And edit as I go along. But for the most part, my creative process being in the patio, like just walk back and forth until I get it. And once I get it, I walk right into my room, walk into that studio, load up the file, get it done, and send it away onto the next one. And it literally took us, it took us 3 months, basically 3 months to get this one done. We've done albums in 6 weeks when we were independent. We've done all kinds of time frames, you know what I mean? But that's just a quick little view. I type, I don't write anymore. I used to write paper and pencil for a long time. I have all my things that I thought I was going to make 10 albums, all the writings that I did in prison. I have them. So I'm going to hang them up somewhere one day. But yeah, super basic. But I just love it when I get inspired. Once I get inspired and I already know what the vision is, I can usually just take off and turn it around pretty quick. But one thing I'll say about this album that was different than most is that I didn't just turn in one verse and just was like, all right, that's going to stick, which was what my usual kind of just like regular occurrence where I would just do the verse, felt good about it, send it in, and that was it. You know what I'm saying? This time it didn't happen that way. I was having different issues. Life was different. Life was way different this year. Whereas you get used to just, oh, everything's gonna work out the same way forever. Nah, that's not right. That's not true. And you don't know that until it's time to do the same thing again. And you're like, well, it's not going the same exact way. So yeah, I would write some verses, and then I just didn't feel right about them as far as like, oh, that's not it. Or I'd send it, and then he would encourage me like, now you could go harder. You know what I'm saying? So like between him and myself, like I'd write some verses over 3-4 times. Sometimes I did. Sometimes like I had just lost my grandmother, and I was like, that was my favorite grandma, and I was her favorite grandson. So it did something to me. You know what I'm saying? So I was going through a funk, through a season, where I kind of just wasn't feeling. I wasn't feeling creative. And I didn't even realize until I went to start penning this album that me and Marty didn't write an album for 2 years. I didn't even think about that. Fear by Hell, and then come to this new album, Everybody Loves a Comeback Story. That's 2 years difference. And so I went to write it, and I was just like, wow, what's going on here? It's almost like if like you work out, and you take up 2 months off, or you take 2 years off, and then you try to bench press that same weight. That's the best analogy I could say, because I went to bench press the same weight like I was bench pressing for 2 years straight. Like, whoa, I had to go condition. I had to recondition again. I had to write verses more and more and more. The only blessing was that I had the gift. So all I had to do was apply the effort and apply to go hard. You know, as long as I was willing to go hard, I had the gift ready. It didn't disappear. But the Lord was telling me, he's like, you've been relying on your own self all this time. You were relying on your talent. You were relying on your skill set. You weren't relying, like basically he was letting me know. That's why I told you every time I write now, I'm like, Lord, what are we writing today? Because he literally just nipped me in the butt and was like, hey boy, I'm part of this. I'm the main part of this. Okay? You're not the main part of this. Remember, you're the vessel. Remember how you always say when you talk, how we're the vessel being used by? Well, you need to adhere to your own advice right there, my brother. And that's like literally, I remember going, like trying to write some rhymes, and I couldn't get that quick opening line that I tell you I usually get. Like if I already know, I heard the vision from Marty, and I already know I love the beat, I'm like, oh, I come in here, I'm going to get the line quick. This time around, when I went to go look for that line, and when I tell you that I'm looking for a line, I'm literally, I may be in my patio pacing, hearing the beat, and might close my eyes, searching for the line. Usually it'll come right there. So I closed my eyes, and I went to look for the line, and everything in my eyesight was blank. Just picture like the Sistine Chapel. If you close your eyes, picture the Sistine Chapel when you close your eyes. All those things are words and or things that you could use for rhyming. That's how my creative process is. Like I literally see colors and a man or like a banana, whatever it could be. It could be a rain, it could be anything. And you just grab and you just pull into your writing palette. And so when I went to go do that, it was blank. And so immediately I knew there was a problem, because I was like, nah, that's real quick. Let me just go get something to eat and come back. And every time that same day, every time I try to look for some words, and you know what I mean, it was blank. And that's when I had that moment, because I already know who I need to go to. I know who I need to go to for this. So I remember looking straight up. I had my headphones on. I looked straight up. I probably do have it recorded, because I have surveillance camera in my patio, so I should pull it up if I find the date. But I looked up and I said, God, what is it? What, I know something's not right. What is it? And he told me that. He's like, you've been leaning on your own self this whole time to do this. Like in that moment, as I was trying to recreate all the other glory years that he's blessed me with. And I went to do it, and and we're coming off pandemic, and church was on internet for 2 years. And you know what I'm saying? Things were just different. Everything was different. Even our walks were different. Trying to find a church again was different until we finally did settle down again. But I tell you what, it was like having to work out again. I had to work out. And the Lord, you know what? I feel blessed. And I'll tell you, like, I didn't tell too many people this story in depth, but I feel blessed that he allowed me to have it still, because I felt there was such a pivotal moment. I promise you, I looked, I said, you taking it? You taking it? Did I squander it? Man, I almost want to cry right now, because it was just that real. I was like, Joe, did you take it? Because I talk real to him. I don't be like, Heavenly Father, we're not doing that right now. Not saying that's wrong, because that's beautiful. But in my moment at that time, I was like, took it? And I almost probably started crying. And it was this whole thing. And I just remember just like praying. I said, God, I'm sorry, I was leaning on my own understanding. I was leaning on my own thinking I was just like, and I remember saying a couple of times, oh, we just relied on skill set and discipline because that's kind of all we had during the pandemic. You know what I mean? And then when we were out of the pandemic and I went to just record regular again, it was a rude awakening. So I'm just blessed and thankful that I had that moment because it just showed me. It just showed me that it's not us. It's not us at all. We're just literally human vessels, skins that he just pours his grace and mercy and love so other people see it through us. Literally, when we're in California, when we're in Texas, when we're all over the place, when we went to New Zealand, when we, you know what I'm saying? Like, what were we doing in New Zealand? There was thousands of people there loving us. I'm like, what? How is this happening? And all those thoughts just rushed through my head. It's like, you know what you got to do to keep the main thing the main thing. And that's really what it was. I just had a reawakening of realizing that even when it just comes to just making songs, just making songs. Some people would just say, "Hey, you're just making songs." Yeah, and making those songs, I had a close encounter with God, who reminded me that even in making these little songs, can't take my eye off of Him. So, in my creative process, I was reawakened to discover a new writing process, and the new writing process is Lord, what we write today. And that's helped me so much. Every single time I get out there, and as soon as I say that, I'm just getting the line. I'm getting the line. I'm getting the line. Because that's what I realized. I realized it was all about Him. And as long as I continue to make this all about Him, I always got to go to Him first. That's just a little insight into that.
No, I love that because I think that's so real. As someone who's also creative, there are limitations to how much you can do in your own strength. And then it's like supernatural reliance on God. Especially
Yeah.
when you do things in like a Christian space, Christian creativity and ministry. It's different, very, very different. So thank you for sharing that. Um, and then I guess just kind of to round off the interview, what are like maybe your highlights, like your favorite thing from working on the album, your favorite tracks, just individually, collectively, the production, Ryan Ellis, Evie, lots of great names and stuff working on this. You had Samuel Ash produce as well. So
From my side of things, the album is amazing and I like a lot of the things on there. But as far as favorites and things of that nature and just songs that are like dear to me and things like that, like I love I Can't Fail. I love that song because it just like almost speaks directly into the season. Unstoppable as well. It speaks into the season I was at. If you listen to that verse, you hear my voice. You hear my voice as a regular, normal, like a bassy type of voice. But when you hear me and re-listen to it so you can understand this is like a serious thing. Like my voice even went up another octave. I was more of a higher, brighter pitch because when I wrote that verse, I was having those moments I was telling you about. So when I finally wrote it, probably the third or fourth version of it, I was in my backyard in the patio. I was laying on my back because I was crying. I was thinking about my grandma. I even wrote about her and that thing. I'm like, yo, I can't write this joint right now. Like, what's going on? And it came to me, and it finally came to me. I had to be on my, I had to give it up. I had to be on my back crying, like, let it go. And he gave me that line. But if you can hear the excitement. You can hear the excitement in my voice because I ran in and recorded it instantly. I'm like, yo, I was waiting for you. So yeah, man, it's just a special thing, you know. Some of these songs, they're for the fans and everything, but they wind up really being something to us as well. So Unstoppable as well. Welcome to the Club. Rendezvous obviously is a big knocker. We play that. Who That Is. I mean, they all have a special place, but those are some big records that we've already performed them too. So I've already fell in love with them, you know.
and then
This album was definitely a labor of love, for sure. Uh, every song to me has like a story, right? So like usually when I produce a song, I have a chorus idea. If I'm going to present an idea to the team, to Fern, I'm going to have a chorus on it, my verse, and the beat. It'll be worked out. It helps out to be like, hey, I got everything already, figured out. Because really music is a puzzle, right? So it's like, how do pieces fit here, and sometimes you got to go back in and then remove. So like for I Can't Fail, we had a different outro, and then I worked with one of my friends to add a more of a musical number at the end with a buddy of ours who is a great writer as well. I think that two songs in particular that really stick out to me. The first one's Unstoppable because we wrote 16 different choruses for that song. It took just a bunch of different variations. You know, we had other writers, so I wrote a version of the chorus, and then I sent it to like 10 other people. I had other guys who helped me produce the song, sending it to their people. We had top writers working on it. And then at the very end, we just weren't happy. And then I'm in the studio and I hum one little thing, and it ended up being the chorus. So like it's funny how like you put all this work, and then at the end of the day, it just comes from you. So Unstoppable went through a bunch of different processes to work out. So that song for me, and that at one point all we had was my verse and the beat without the chorus, and you know, just trying to figure that out. So it's like a puzzle. So that song in particular really meant a lot to me. I mean, all of them have a story, you know, all of them have like a story of how it came together and how it worked out. Like I Can't Fail has a story. And again, the song again, like I originally wrote that song on a different beat, and because the producer didn't want to sell it to me for some reason. I have no idea why. He was like, I'm going to wait for a bigger artist to have it. And I was like, a bigger artist to have it. Okay. Because sometimes when you work with new producers, their hope is through the roof, right? So they're like, I can get this to Drake. You're not going to get that to Drake. It's not going to happen. You have millions of producers trying to get to him. He's not going to pick this beat. So I was like, all right, what do I do from there? I sent it to a buddy of mine. I sent it to 4 different producers. One of the guys produced 5 songs on Kanye's new album. One of the guys produced a bunch of songs for this guy, and then ended up being a guy at Reach Records, Carvello, who made the best version of it. And then that song has like 3 versions. And then what I did was I wrote the chorus on it. Then I sent it to John Keith and was like, hey, can you do the chorus on this one for me? And so then he actually changed it up a little bit, but kept the words and then made that what it was. And then I added an outro chorus on it. So it's like, it's funny because music, the best way I can explain like my creative process is music is like a river, right? Creativity is a river. You can either jump on the river and go with it, or you can try to create your own river. It's harder to create your own river. So it's like if sometimes when I produce a song, I'll hear something that really inspires me, but I'm like, I don't want to make something like this today. I want to make a banger. If I just follow the creative river of like just jump into it, this could fully become a song. But if I try to make something that I want, it's like it doesn't really work out. So I try to be obedient to like the way music just kind of follows that trend. So yeah, so for this album, we were able to get in everything we wanted. Every feature that we wanted, we got, which is really hard to do. Sometimes you want to have features on it that just don't really work out. Like on the last album, I shouldn't even tell that story. But anyway, we wanted certain people that just we couldn't get, or they just didn't work out with their schedule. So for this album, I wanted Ryan Ellis on Unstoppable. We wanted Evie because we were going to go on tour with her for Born for This. We wanted Jordan. As soon as I heard that song and we wrote What You Need, I was like, Jordan Felice would kill this because he's got that vibe. So everything really worked out perfectly on this album. And then this is I was saying this in the beginning of the interview, this is one of the first albums where we didn't have the expectation from the label to make a CCM song, right? So like they always want a radio song because we can do everything we want, but if we give them a right radio song, it'll help us get to places we've never been before. It's important for us to do that. I feel like it's important for artists to get out of their comfort zone and make stuff that they wouldn't normally make because it could reach, you know, people you never thought of. So, so for this album, we didn't have that, but we ended up still making that vibe. So, this album was definitely Labor Love post-pandemic album. We dropped an album during the pandemic that didn't really do as well as we wanted to because I don't think people's minds were on music. I think the whole industry suffered in general. But this album was like, all right, we haven't dropped an album in 2 years. What do we have to say in this part of our career? This is a 10-year, we've been doing this for 10 years. what do we have to say? You know, what do we have to bring to the table? And I feel like for this album, we got to say everything we wanted to say and bring everything we wanted. And to be honest with you, it's inspired me to keep creating. So, you know, in this past month, I've been doing this thing where it's like I make a song a day. I make the beat, I make the song a day. So that's like my goal every single day. And it just kept inspiring me to keep this. You know, you tap into some type of creative, you don't want it to stop. But good art, sometimes you don't want to stop creating. It has to be abandoned. You have to like say, all right, the end. If I keep creating, it's gonna go crazy. This album, we had to like, all right, it's done, moved it on. But the creative juices have been flowing in me in Fern, so it's been a great album to work on.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and then I have one more question that's kind of just come in my head. What would you like listeners to take away from the listening experience? So just like listening to the album, what do you want people to have in mind when they listen to it as like a body of art?
Good question. I want people to first off come into the album. I would say with if you're a fan, if you've never heard of Social Club, then just come. I think you'll just enjoy the album. I think that you'll listen to it, you'll be pleasantly surprised. I think that you'll hear it and you'll be like, oh, okay. Overall, what we usually get, and what I get from people is like, oh, I didn't know you were Christian. Your music's good,
Yeah.
which is bad. Which is bad for Christian music in general. For people to be like, I have this idea that Christian music sucks. So when I hear you, I'm like, oh, this is good. So actually, one of my wife's friends, who's like a huge YouTuber, she has 10 million subscribers. She does workout videos online, and she just has this big, huge platform. And she texted my wife. She was like, "Got What You Need is on my workout playlist from Spotify." She was like, "This song is awesome. I didn't even know your husband made music. Like, I didn't know it was Christian. Like, that's what I want. That's what me and Fern, we want to hear that. We want to hear, like, we broke the expectation of what Christian music should be. For fans who like Christian music or possibly know who we are, I would hope that you have an open mind and understand that this album is the cross genre album. You're gonna have hip hop. You're gonna have more than hip hop, and so you're gonna get an accurate representation of someone from South Florida giving you music. It's like we're letting you into our culture, into our life, and I hope
Yeah.
that when you hear the album, it blesses you because this album you can listen to. It's a lifestyle. It's like what Fern always says. It's a lifestyle album. Listen to it while working out. Listen to it while driving. Listen to it while you're going through low moments and high moments and moments in life where you just need an answer. You'll be able to worship on this album. You'll be able to connect to these songs in a deep way because they're written. They're written with our blood, sweat, and tears. You know, we wrote this album. We put a lot of effort into it. Not that we don't always do it, but this is one of those few albums that it just felt like God was in the middle of everything we were doing. And I hope that this album makes you laugh. I hope this album touches you deeply, and I hope this album makes you say like these guys when they rap, they're creative, they're smart. I think that's something I've always wanted people to get from our music is that we're witty when we rap, we're smart. We're gonna challenge you when we rap. We're gonna talk about God in a different way when we rap. We're gonna approach Christianity in a different way because South Florida, we see God in a different way. Like we see our God is a very diverse God. Our God is, and no matter where you are, I feel like you'll be able to respect it. You'll be able to understand that. God's not done with you. The whole idea, even behind everybody loves a comeback story, is like that story of Lazarus. That story where it's not over until God says it's over. I was thinking about this the other day, the story of the little girl who passed away. So God tells everyone to get out of the room. All those people get out of the room. I just think about like, what were they? I could just imagine them putting their ear on the wall or on the door and listening to Jesus, and you hear feet and they're like, oh, there's people in the room. That's more than Jesus. Like this idea that they were crying and mourning, and God's like, hey, the world feels like you've ran out of purpose and it's over. Like there's a certain amount of purpose and then you're done. No. God, as long as you have air in your lungs, there's still hope. There's still work to be done. The kingdom still needs to be built. And when you see the kingdom as something that we play our part in the kingdom, it becomes a lot easier than thinking that it all relies on us or just relies on one person. No, it's all of us getting together. When you say yes to God, it affects more than just you. When you say no to God, it affects more than just you. And I hope that the listeners say yes to God and say, you know what, there's still something left for me. It's not over until God says it's over. And so everybody loves a comeback story, and it's out now, and I hope that fans enjoy it and feel inspired by it.
I hope that, they could see that we're just like them. We're just human. I actually got a song called Human, and just talking about all the different things going on lately, with friends and relationships and things of that nature. And don't ever just put us on some pedestal or something. Just look at us as some guys who said yes to God, and we said yes to God through the venue of music. Just like you said yes to God through the venue of journalism. And that's it. Look at us as the regular guys who said yes, and this is the job that we chose to take. This is the endeavor that we chose to take on. So we love everybody, and don't ever look to us like higher than God or anything like that. Always keep your eye focused on God. He's the main reason, and he's always the main thing. So if you're listening to these songs, I hope they bless you. I hope they make you happy. I hope if you're sad, you find a little safe space in there, a little pocket to just cozy up in, and find out that you got two brothers who love you guys, and who share similar stories with you guys.
Yeah. We understand that life is complex. I think Jesus understood that. I think that nowadays people don't have the tolerance or the empathy for others. And life is very tough. And there's only a few things you can really do to leave an impact. And one of those things is to be kind to one another and to love people without having ulterior motives. And so when we make music, we're always thinking about how we could share our story. And when we get specific about our story, it actually gives people more freedom. And so, Fern talks a lot about having a season of depression on this album. I talk a lot about just overcoming the self-doubt and the fear. And so, on one of the songs I say, fear doesn't pay the rent. And it's true, because we think we allow fear into our life. And fear doesn't do anything except for hold us back. Fear is the biggest lie, because when you realize that we are created intentionally by the creator of the heaven and earth with a purpose. And fear is us just thinking we're not good enough or we're not qualified. But we have a savior, the creator of the heavens and earth, says you are qualified. And even if you do fail, and even if you do, you're still not failing, because you put yourself out there. That's what the song I Can't Fail is about. It's about, understanding that even if you try, as long as you're trying, you're not failing.
Yeah.
As long as you're living and breathing and not, like I heard this quote, life is a constant fight for territory. And when you stop fighting, life starts to take territory in your life. And so I think about that, like, if I quit, I'll believe everything that everyone has to say about me. I'll get sucked into that thought. But if I keep fighting for territory and saying I'm going to keep trying, I'm going to keep going for it, I think that God works. The Bible says God works with us, right? So you think about the scripture about the Bible and I think it's in Judges, where they tell him, hey, pull the arrow back, pull it out. And as far as the arrow goes, is as much land as God will give you. Like, it's us with God working together. Every single situation, it's like us stepping out in faith, because God has anointed us. And once you come to that revelation that God has anointed you, that you can move forward, you're going to fail sometimes, but it's not really failing. It's actually success.
It's part of it.
Yeah, when you can look at fear and you can look at things, I'm going to keep trying. Like, that is the ultimate success story. And so I hope that fans understand that we're all in this together. And Social Club, as big as we get and as small as we get, I hope we don't get small, but as big as we get, we're never going to lose sight in that the fact that God has called us to serve others, and we're not perfect, and that's great. We're limited. That gives us more freedom to understand that God has got it,
Amen.
And
Anna, this has been a 2-hour interview. We've never done a 2-hour interview before.
It is a 2-hour? I didn't even know.
I know. I've been pushing another meeting for the last hour. Just to wrap up the interview, where can people find you on social media and online?
Social Club Misfits, just type it in, you'll see everything. Social Club Misfits on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, everything. Social Club Misfits. Just type us in. Say what's up. You heard the interview. Comment. DM us. Love to talk, make new friends. So thank you, Hannah. Best interview ever.
Thanks.
If you ever want to jump into a podcast world with Social Club, this is a great chemistry. We can make something happen. And you asked very intricate questions I don't think we've ever been asked before. So that's why I feel like you did research, you care. This is our Nardwuar interview, you know?
Yeah. Think about that though. 2 hours, that means wow, man. Thanks for pulling those things out. You know, those things need to be said. And even if it's for our fans and our audience across the pond in the UK, for them to just get a different view of us, that's amazing. So you pulled the exclusive, you know?
Yeah, we didn't do any interviews for this one interview because if they ask us to do more interviews,
content from this one, that's it.
We did it with Hannah already.
You send them the link. Yeah.
Right here. You'll hear everything you need.
Exactly.